Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Upgrades. I'm Jeremy Knoll,
And I'm John Suarez.
and in this episode, we're going to talk about the Quantum Quandrix deck from Commander 2021, featuring Adrix and Nev Twin Casters as the commander. So when we did our Commander versus episode where we played the precons, this is the deck I got, and I was very excited about it. So when we actually opened them up, I wasn't there. Parnell actually opened them up, and I was like, I don't know if we're going to want these, and he just wouldn't, you're going to want this deck. So immediately called me out on it, and he was very correct. I like this deck a lot. I think there's a lot of play to it, and it's a little bit different than the super, landfall value-based green-blue decks that we've had in recent past. But yeah, it's very exciting. So I highly suggest picking it up. It's a lot of fun out of the box. So for the upgrades, we actually agreed on several cards. I think there's a few pretty obvious choices for this type of deck, and a few that definitely I am going to be putting in this type of deck. So why don't you go over the first couple, John?
Sure, yeah. I'll start with the biggie, the one that I think everyone should put in this deck, and I think you've played in most of every green deck you own, and that is Avenger of Zendikar. 5 colorless, 2 green, 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 0/1 plant for every land you control, and then it has the landfall of giving them all +1/+1 counters. Obviously, when your commander doubles the amount of tokens you make, this is just this was the layup.
Yep.
I don't think there was more of a layup.
There's a reason that I am the 0/1 plant token, and it is 100% because of this card. It is one of my favorite cards in Commander. I love just casting it and getting all those plants and then just putting counters on them. It's too much fun. The next one is one that I definitely suggest. I'm surprised it's still as cheap as it is right now. I would have expected this to be more, and that's Kadama of the East Tree. It's a 6/6 for 4 green, and it has the surprise reach. Definitely has the this creature has reach, and it's it is a partner, and it says whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So basically getting to play 2 spells a turn.
Yeah,
fantastic. I really enjoy this card. Definitely pick it up. I think it's going to be great in this deck, especially if you're drawing as many cards as I think you're going to draw. So
yep, for sure. A couple other cards we have Champion of Lambolt. 3 mana 1/1 creatures with power less than champion can't block creatures you control, or creatures and whenever another creature enters the battlefield in your control, you get a +1/+1 counter on champion. So obviously if you're cloning or doubling things, you're going to get multiple counters on champion, and then all of a sudden your opponent's creatures aren't going to be able to block your team.
Yeah, it's a fantastic card in any green based go wide strategy for sure, but any green base that just even makes a couple of creatures a turn,
I love that it's not an elf.
Yeah.
I do love that.
Yeah. You would expect it to be.
You would.
Not having it in another elf deck is great, because this would also just be fairly annoying in an elf deck. Another one that I really like that is more recent, that I think is going to just make a ton of tokens, and it gets really annoying on Arena, is Skewed Swarm. And boy, do I like this card. 1/1 for 2 and green, landfall whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1. If you control 6 or more lands, create a copy of Skewed Swarm instead. So by the time you're getting to 6 lands, if you have Adrix and Nev out, and you play a land with Skewed Swarm out, you're just getting way more Skewed Swarms, and they can swarm very quickly. I love this card.
So my next card is another fantastic card, Tireless Tracker. 2 colorless and a green, 3/2. I'm also surprised this card wasn't as expensive as I expected it to be. And it has landfall, even though it doesn't say it, to investigate. So you'll create a clue token. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, you get a +1/+1 counter on the Tireless Tracker. This card is awesome with Adrix, right? You get multiple clue tokens, because it doesn't care if you're making creatures or not. It just matters that you're making tokens.
Yeah.
So you're going to get double clue tokens every time you play a land. That's awesome.
Double the amount of tokens you're making. So that's clue tokens, or if you have food tokens or anything like that, and you put that stuff, you put those cards in there, and you're just going to get those extra ones, as an added bonus for having your commander out. Going over a couple of other cards that actually fit the tokens theme, that is going to be Awakening Zone. Another one that I think is really great in a green deck, especially if you're trying to ramp up and you're fine with it being a little bit slower. But doubling the amount of tokens that you get every turn of those Eldrazi spawn that can sacrifice to add colorless, just fantastic. Another one is a more recent one, and that's Mystic Reflection. When I had Adrix and Nev previewed online, immediately went to Twitter and was like, I have a new goal, and that is Adrix and Nev, Mystic Reflection, Avenger of Zendikar, and then something like I think of a Parallel Lives. And
try to break the game.
I think it was actually the other commander that I actually had, and as my example too. It wasn't even Adrix and Nev. It was Essex Fractal
Essex,
Bloom.
gotcha.
Yeah. So just being able to make a ton of Avenger of Zendikars off of your tokens, and then that triggers again to make at least one of the triggers makes a bunch more Avengers. That is just silly fun to me. So Mystic Reflection is definitely one that I have cast, copying Avenger of Zendikar when it comes into play, and being able to do that again with doubling your counters is just, it's too much fun. And then the last one that makes tokens that I really enjoy this card, I have had it in and out of decks for a long time, and that's Giant Adaphage. Making a second Giant Adaphage token when you actually get that trigger of dealing combat damage to a player, creating one token, creating two of these 7/7 tramplers is just, that's chef's kiss. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's a sweet card.
Yeah.
Next card is something that you actually have recently played on Commander Versus, and that is Eska's Chariot. This card is really sweet. 4 mana, 4/4 vehicle, and it makes you two 2/2 green cat creature tokens.
Lawyer tokens?
Yeah, apologies. Lawyer tokens.
Yeah.
And if you have Adrix, you get double that. That's obnoxious.
Yeah.
And then obviously it has more text on it of whenever it attacks, you create a token that's a copy of target token you control.
Yeah, so you get double that when you have Adrix.
Yeah, it gets out of hand real quick.
Yeah,
the crew is 4, which is a lot, but it doesn't matter because you're going to have so many tokens. What does it matter?
It comes in with enough tokens to crew it itself,
yeah.
So it's fine. I like that one a lot. I think it's a really solid add for a card that is currently just the most recent set in print, so it's going to be very easy to pick it up as a rare. The next one is one that is a little bit older, but still very cheap card, and that's Avatar of the Resolute. I try to play this. I've played this a couple of times in Commander Versus. I really like it in any deck that's +1/+1 counter theme. It's a reach trample 3/2 for 2 green, and whenever it enters the battlefield, it comes in with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. May not seem like much, but this deck actually makes a lot of fractal tokens, which are 0/0s that come in with +1/+1 counters on them. So very easy to have this one just end up being, a 7/6 just very easily for 2, or even higher than that. And it's got trample, so big plus there. And again, another surprise reach creature.
My next card is another one that makes tokens, and that's Nadir Kraken. So 3 mana, 2/3. Whenever you draw a card, something that's going to happen every turn of the game, you may pay 1, and if you do, you get a +1/+1 counter on the Kraken, and you create a 1/1 blue tentacle token. So you can flood the board with all these tokens. You'll have way more tentacles than you think you could possibly have, because you're going to keep drawing cards constantly through the game.
Yeah.
And for 1 mana, you're going to make tokens. That's pretty great.
Yeah, making your creature bigger while also making tokens. It's a fantastic addition to this deck as well. So my next, I'm going to go over actually my last 3 cards. They're all +1/+1 counter themed, along with the Avatar of the Resolute. So the first one is the easy one, and that is Hardened Scales. It is starting to get up a little bit in price, but it's still under our budget of about $10 a card. And that's an enchantment for 1 green, and it says if 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put onto a creature you control, that many +1 are put onto it instead. So you just get an additional +1/+1 counter on whatever. But it builds up when you've got other cards like Fathom Mage. Fathom Mage is an evolved creature, a 1/1 for 2 blue-green, has evolve, and it says whenever a +1/+1 counter is put on Fathom Mage, you may draw a card. Works really well with Fathom Mage. The Hardened Scales works really well with Fathom Mage. Works really well with Nadir Kraken. Works really well with the Avenger of Zendikar triggers.
Oh yeah,
it just
real sweet.
It gets out of hand fast. The last one, also fantastic with Hardened Scales, and that is Loyal Guardian. It is a Trampler 4/4 for 4 and a green, and it has Lieutenant. So at the beginning of your combat on your turn, if you control your commander, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. And
very sweet card.
Yeah, this one's fantastic. It was only printed in a precon. If you're anywhere near +1/+1 counters on anything, or it's great, and it's a Trampler. I like this card a lot. I try and put it in a lot of decks that are even slightly themed around +1/+1 counters. So
for sure. And my last card is a doozy in this deck, and that is Mimikvat. 3 colorless. It has imprint. It's an artifact. It has imprint. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you can exile it. And if you do, you return each other exiled card with Mimikvat to its owner's graveyard. And you can pay 3 mana, tap it, and create a token that's a copy of the card exiled with Mimikvat. It gains haste, and it exiles at the beginning of the end step. Really, really sweet in this deck, because you're going to be making double tokens.
Yeah.
So now you're not just making generic 1/1s or 0/1 plants or cat lawyers. Now you're going to be making tokens of creatures that have died.
Yeah. As soon as you hit one of your Avenger of Zendikar, or your if you've got your Tireless Tracker, and Champion Lambhold, you're going to start doubling up that stuff, and it's going to get out of hand real fast. And
it also grabs your opponent's creatures.
Yeah. Make sure to keep an eye on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because doubling up the amount of creatures that you get when you have Adrix and Nev out is fantastic.
Yeah.
So a couple cards that we talked about that we think we would actually take out of this deck. One that I would take out personally is Azuri's Predation.
Yeah.
It does cost quite a bit, and I've always found it it just kind of depends, because doubling your counters or doubling your tokens. Yeah, I can see how you'd want to do that. But for 8 mana, playing a bunch of creatures that are you've got probably a 60% that they're going to stay around because they have to fight each other creature that's in the battlefield, is always that's an okay rate. Doubling them, great. Still a bit more mana than I would like to pay for that. So there's cooler things I'd like to do than Azuri's Predation.
And one of them is not casting Desolation Twin. I would cut that card out of the deck. 10 mana is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a cool card. It's a really flashy, giant Eldrazi, 10/10 for 10. That gives you a 10/10 when it comes into play. So if you have Adrix, you get 3 10/10s total. But it's 10 mana. That is a ton of mana to spend on a card that has no other, text. It essentially has no other abilities. So
yeah, it's 2 10/10s if you don't have your commander out, 3 10/10s if you do.
Yeah.
Impressive, but they don't do anything else,
Yep.
So the next one that I would also suggest taking out is one that actually comes from Strixhaven, and that's Eureka Moment. I get the idea behind it. I think it's neat, but there are better cards for this. 2 blue-green, draw 2 cards. You can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. You've got Explorer, you've got Growth Spiral, you've got things like that are cheaper.
Urban Evolution.
Urban Evolution I love Urban Evolution, and I would run that 100% over this card. So it's fine. It is an instant, so you do have that advantage, but still not something I would be playing.
Yep. And because we added things like Giant Adaphage and stuff, I went ahead and chose to take out Spawning Kraken. It's another Commander 21 card. Whenever Kraken, Leviathan, or Octopus, or Serpent you control deals combat damage to a player, you create a 9/9, and it's a 6 mana 6/6. It has no evasion. It has no way of getting in out of nowhere. It's just kind of just big dumb guy that makes other things if you happen to connect. And I think you just get a better rate on better cards.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely agree. You can just do better things. Like that's another one of the cards that I think is going to go really well in your Leviathan Serpent's Kraken deck,
Yeah,
like you said.
yeah,
But it's like, yeah, in this deck, I don't think it
yeah,
really does what you want it to do quite.
for sure.
So my
Uh,
last one is Nissa's Expedition, and it's a 4 to green for Convoke. It has Convoke for sorcery that says search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Obviously, it's trying to get you to basically pay 1 for it, which is a very good rate, but like, do you want to be tapping those creatures? It depends on what the
yeah,
creatures are, you know. So I would cut that one personally. I don't think
I'll
it's
be
powerful.
I'll be perfectly honest, Jeremy. When I saw that on your list, I thought it was Nissa's Pilgrimage, and I thought you were just crazy.
Yeah, put Pilgrimage in and over this for
Yeah,
sure.
that card is way worse than I thought it was, because I definitely thought you were suggesting to cut like a Cultivate, and I was like,
Yeah,
this doesn't make any sense. I
just
don't know
like,
what's going on.
why would Jeremy do that? That's wild. No, that's
Uh,
it's not as good as you would think. It puts them both onto the battlefield, but I mean, for 1 less overall mana, you can play your explosive vegetation or your Skyshore Claims. So
yeah, and the last card I'm going to go ahead and cut from the list is it's a card I liked a lot way back in the day, and that's Arashi the Sky Asunder. 5
yeah,
mana, 5/5. You can pay X and green, tap it, and it'll deal X to a creature with flying. And then it has the channel ability where you can discard it from your hand, pay X and 2 green, and it'll deal X damage to each creature with flying. It's a cool way of getting rid of a bunch of flyers, but I think you're gonna be swarming the board so much that you're probably not going to care about them overall.
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, like it's a cool way to get rid of the flyers because
Hmm.
honestly, this deck doesn't have much in the way of like reach. It has like your Hornet's Nest or your Hornet Nest when it dies, your Hornet Queen
Hmm.
for with your flyers, but yeah, so you can do better
Yep.
for sure. So that is our episode of upgrades for the Quantum Quandrix deck. As always, make sure to let us know what cards you would add to the deck in the comments below. Make sure to also like, share, and subscribe. For John Suarez, I'm Jeremy Knoll. Thanks for watching.